In this podcast, we're looking at the significance of Jesus' ministry of healing and trying to learn what it can tell us about the nature of healing in healthcare and things that we need to know for better understanding healthcare. Here's a story that comes out of Luke's Gospel. Luke, remember, was a physician. Luke chapter 8. As Jesus was on his way, the crowds almost crushed him, and a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years, but no one could heal her. She came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak, and immediately her bleeding stopped. "Who touched me?" Jesus asked. When they all denied it, Peter said, "Master, the people are crowding and pressing against you." But Jesus said, "Someone touched me. I know that power has gone out from me." Then the woman, seeing that she could not go unnoticed, came trembling and fell at his feet. In the presence of all the people, she told why she had touched him and how she had been instantly healed. Then he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace." Some interesting factors about the story. Apparently, the woman was having a menstrual bleed. She'd been having it for 12 years. This was a double problem in her society. Not only was she sick, probably really anemic after bleeding for 12 years, but she was also unclean. According to Jewish society, a woman with a menstrual period was not allowed out of the house, and clearly she had broken that taboo already. No one could come in contact with her because she was unclean, and she'd also broken that taboo by being in the middle of a crowd of people that were all pushing and shoving, and probably a number of people touching her. So probably that explains why she didn't want to own up to what it was that she was doing. But she was desperate, and after 12 years of bleeding and doing everything she could to find healing without any success, she somehow heard about Jesus and had the idea in her head that somehow Jesus could help her. We're not sure why she thought that. We're not sure about where she'd heard Jesus or what she knew about him, but the story says that she came up behind him, touched the edge of his cloak, and immediately her bleeding stopped. Jesus felt this somehow. He understood that something had happened, and he was intent on making sure that this did not go unnoticed. I think probably it was partly because he wanted people to understand the significant nature of what had happened and to learn a lesson from it, but also he wanted the woman to understand that this was not some kind of magical transaction that had taken place, that it was about faith. And so he says to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you." Faith is about surrendering to Jesus. It's about trusting Jesus. It's about saying, "I don't know the answers, but I know that Jesus does, and I trust him with that." So with that in mind, let's look at some of the rest of the implications of the story. There's a very interesting word here in the Greek. The word is sozo, and it's the word that appears here in the Greek where it says, "Woman, your faith has healed you." The word sozo derives from a word that means life, and it can come to mean healing and health, and it can also mean saving or salvation. And so you will find different translations of this Bible verse, some of which say, "Woman, your faith has healed you." Other will say, Woman, your faith has saved you." And those are equivalents. In Jesus' understanding, those were synonyms. To be healed was to be saved, and to be saved was to be healed. And so what you get is a picture of the holistic nature of the ministry of Jesus. Jesus is about restoring life in its fullest sense, in its richest and most complete sense. Jesus is about restoring life to people who have lost it, who have been broken, who have been robbed of life in some degree or other. You might say that every human being lives a partial kind of life, a tenuous sort of life, a thin kind of life that is not rich, not full, but just barely hangs on. We think it's normal because it's all we see. But Jesus knows that it's not normal, that the kind of life that people were intended to live is far richer, far fuller, far more complete than the kind of life that anybody lives nowadays. and that the real meaning of salvation is to restore to people the kind of life that God intended that they should have. If the present life is monochrome, the kind of life that Jesus wants to give is living color. If the present life that we have is a scratchy little monophonic LP, then the kind of life that Jesus wants us to have is Dolby Digital surround sound stereo. If the kind of life that we have now is a thin, weak, anemic sort of life, Jesus wants us all to be muscular and strong. That's the real meaning of salvation. The full statement is found in John 10:10, where Jesus says, I came that they might have life, and might have it more abundantly. And this is only really half of the statement. Here's the rest of it. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy, Jesus says. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. Notice both halves of the statement. The thief comes to steal and kill and destroy. One of the things that Jesus taught people was that there is a thief loose in this world, and he is stealing away your life. He is stealing away the fullness of what God intended for you to have. But Jesus came into the world to do battle with the thief, to stop him, and to give you what he has taken away, and even more besides, to give you life, full, rich, abundant life. Jesus has compassion, which literally means to suffer with, and that's why he wants to do this for us, because he has compassion on us. He loves us and he cares about us. We are his children. Here's a story in Matthew chapter 9 that describes that compassion. Jesus went through all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, preaching the good news of the kingdom, and healing every disease and sickness. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them, because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Jesus felt what people feel. Jesus had a sense of human suffering, and he wanted to do something about it. He suffered right along with those who were suffering, and his desire was to relieve that suffering. Another story. As Jesus and his disciples were leaving Jericho, a large crowd followed him. 2 blind men were sitting by the roadside, and when they heard that Jesus was going by, they shouted, Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us. The crowd rebuked them and told them to be quiet, but they shouted all the louder, Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us. Jesus stopped and called them, What do you want me to do for you? Lord, they answered, we want our sight. Jesus had compassion on them and touched their eyes. Immediately they received their sight and followed him. Now, there's a sense, of course, in which this is a touching human story. There's also a sense in which it represents a larger human story, because in a larger sense we are all blind. We are all unable to see realities as they really are. And we all need a touch from Jesus to be able to see life as it really is, because we tend to think that what we see is all there is, and it's not true. Jesus says that the unseen things are more real than the things that are seen. So what we ask for, Jesus has compassion upon us and gives. This is intimately tied to faith. You have compassion on Jesus' part and faith on our part, and the two kind of meet in a sense, somewhere in the middle. As Jesus went on from there, 2 blind men followed him, calling out, Have mercy on us, Son of David. When he had gone indoors, the blind men came to him, and he asked them, Do you believe that I am able to do this? Yes, Lord, they replied. Then he touched their eyes and said, According to your faith will it be done to you. And their sight was restored. So clearly it has to be something on the part of the person who receives the healing miracle that they need to somehow trust Jesus, have confidence that he's able to do this. But it's more than that. It's more about such confidence that whatever Jesus chooses to do is understood to be right with them. So it's really about trust more than it is about anything else.